Hi, everybody. I'm Bryn Buskirk. I'm the Vice President for Marketing and External Relations at Phoebe Ministries, which is headquartered in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And today we're going to talk about how to shop for senior living. So here at Phoebe, I oversee our marketing teams and our sales teams for independent living and for personal care on each of our 4 campuses. Over the last 10 years, what I typically hear the most from people searching for senior care or retirement living is, this is so overwhelming. Where do I start? It's important to note, and I'll mention this several times throughout the presentation today, that the US Department of Health and Human Services says that approximately 70% of seniors over the age of 65 will need some form of long-term care for the average of 2 years during some point in their life from age 65 and older. Unless you have a crystal ball, you don't have a way to predict the need for long-term care. That's impossible. But in this session, I truly hope that I can help you approach your search with more confidence and hopefully even with some excitement. I'm sure you know Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley have a lot of options for older adults. Here is sort of an overview slide to ponder and actions you can take to get started. I hope you're making this decision to look for senior living proactively, and you have some time to work through some of these questions and these tasks, but sometimes a crisis presents itself and you must move quickly, even if you need to make a sudden decision. If you've already thought about these things ahead of time, you're already a step ahead. So that's great. What I tell people when they start looking for senior living is to think about where you see yourself. What do you enjoy doing? What things make you happy? What are your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves? So for example, a must-have might be close parking if you have a hard time walking, far distances. It might be one floor living. Those are examples of must-haves. A nice to have is an amenity like a pub or a swimming pool or some of those nice benefits that you would like to have, but aren't really a requirement for you to live safely. You also need to determine the level of care you need. I go into that a bit more in a few slides, but by narrowing down the level of care you need, you are going to narrow your choices down for suitable places where you could live. I also implore you to do your research, visit websites, call communities, talk with salespeople. Since I oversee sales at Phoebe, I have a lot of great relationships with other sales professionals in the Lehigh Valley and other senior communities. And I can assure you that we all want you to find the right place for you. It has to be a good match. So don't be afraid to talk to multiple salespeople. Don't be afraid to be transparent that you're doing it. Think about this. Think about it. When I talk to people at Phoebe who are looking for senior living, I often liken it to when either maybe your child or a grandchild or a family friend who you have was looking for colleges. It's very similar. You want to find that right fit and that right feeling for you. And just like the university wants the right student to attend, senior communities are very much the same way. Also, now that the COVID vaccine is available, many communities are open for in-person tours and visits. If you're able, visit the campus. If you're not able to, ask for a virtual tour because many of them can provide virtual tours. And lastly, do not be afraid to take notes. It will help you compare communities after you've looked at several. Okay, so you've done your research. Now, what do you do? Where do you go? I'd like to explain a little bit about what types of communities and services you will find here in the Lehigh Valley and beyond. So let's start with a 55 plus community. There are a lot of these springing up here in the Lehigh Valley. It's a popular choice for younger, independent seniors. That's important. Independent is very important. It includes a full home. Typically, there's an HOA fee and some maintenance and some groundskeeping and snow removal and things like that can be included. They're not always, but often they are. They often offer something like a clubhouse or various clubs and activities that you can be involved with. The important thing with the 55 plus community to think about is you'll be living among your peers with older adults, independent, healthy older adults, but you do not have access to a continuum of care on that campus if you were to need it later. So if you end up needing something like assisted living or personal care or rehab, you would have to leave your 55 plus community to have access to those services. They're not something that's offered at the actual community. Independent living is similar to a 55 plus community in that it's really for independent older adults, but and it can be in an apartment home or it can be in like a larger cottage that you live in, but it's typically part of a CCRC. And you're going to hear me say CCRC several times. A CCRC is short for a continuing care retirement community. And I explain that, I think, on the next slide. But here there's home and yard maintenance typically included, as are other amenities for living independently at a CCRC in independent living. The next level of care or service for older adults is personal care. This is for seniors who can do some things independently, but need assistance with activities of daily living. These are called ADLs. If you hear the term ADLs, that's short for activities of daily living. These can be bathing, dressing, managing medications, things like that. In Pennsylvania, assisted living and personal care communities are licensed a bit differently. Assisted living communities have some different staffing, building layouts, and care provisions for a license such as that, so that residents can age in place. Personal care communities, extremely similar in Pennsylvania, but they do require older adults who need advanced cognitive and physical help to often transition to a skilled nursing community, which is often on the same campus. So skilled nursing, that's the next one that you see on the slide. That is generally when people think of a nursing home, nursing care, that is a skilled nursing facility. This is a location for older adults who are in later stages of dementia, or they might not be able to ambulate well, and they need care more like 24 hours a day. So they live in a skilled nursing community. There's also at-home care. At-home care is agency care provided in your home. An aide comes to your home. That can be where you live now. That can be in a 55 plus community. That can even be in independent living at a CCRC. And they provide the assistance that you need. The care is typically provided for a minimum of 4-hour time blocks. So if an aide is coming to your home to provide care, generally it's for a period of time that's about 4 hours in length. And you can buy chunks of those 4-hour time periods for in-home care. Lastly, there is a newer product out there for older adults. It's called a CCRC without walls. This is a hybrid, sort of the easiest way to explain it is a long-term care insurance policy that includes wellness planning and care in your home. Phoebe offers a CCRC without walls program. It's called Pathstones by Phoebe. I encourage you to visit their booth and to see Lisa Hoffman, who's the executive director of Pathstones, to see her presentation because she shares some information about CCRCs without walls. There are several other programs like this also offered in Pennsylvania. So we'll talk a little bit about a CCRC, a continuing care retirement community. These are campuses that offer a continuum of care. So it's a special type of senior housing, a senior community that lets seniors take advantage of precise services they need to live comfortably and safely. Phoebe offers CCRCs. We have 4 CCRCs. We have 4 different campuses. Some others in the area that might sound familiar are Fellowship Community, Luther Crest, Kirkland Village. Those are all examples of CCRCs here in the Lehigh Valley. Seniors often want to live independently for as long as they can, and this type of senior community provides that option. At a CCRC, seniors are also living in a vibrant community, no matter what level of care they are in, so they don't feel isolated. And in the event that a change in their ability to live independently occurs, additional services are provided along a continuum to meet their needs, generally on that same campus. Residents of a CCRC and their family members can evaluate their needs as time goes on, while essentially remaining in the same place, and this eliminates some disruption in their lives as they grow older. So as you see here on the slide, we have independent living. Generally, when people move to a CCRC, they move into independent living. They're living independently in a cottage or in an apartment on that campus. If they start having some trouble ambulating or with some activities of daily living, they may at that time move into assisted living or personal care and live in personal care assisted living for a while. And then from there, should they need additional care, then you would move into nursing home care or skilled nursing care. You see the arrows go both ways on the slide though, because You tend to think people move independently and then move their way along the continuum as they age and they need more care. But we often see people move the opposite way. We see people move into our skilled nursing community because they perhaps need some short-term rehab. And then they move to our personal care community as they gain strength. And then they see what it's like to live at a CCRC, to have the social aspect of living, to have the activities, the convenience of dining, maintenance-free living, and they'll stay in personal care, or sometimes they'll even move to independent living if they're able to, and then they'll live in independent living. You also see in-home care is mentioned on this slide because, as I mentioned, you can really use in-home care at any point along the continuum. That's generally private paid, and they can provide services to you in your home or wherever it is that you are living. So what question should I ask when I am touring a community? You've narrowed down the care level you need. You've narrowed down the area that you want to look at, for example. Let's talk about what you should do when you visit a community, whether it be a virtual visit or an in-person visit. So your questions are going to vary depending on the type of community that you are visiting or that you're looking at. I tell people all the time, and this is very important. It's something that I mention often, and I'm sure if there's other senior communities that are involved here for this expo who are nonprofit communities, I'm sure they would tell you the same thing. Make sure you ask about charitable or benevolent care at the campuses where you go to look. Many nonprofit continuing care retirement communities have a benevolent care fund, meaning if you outlive your retirement, you're still guaranteed care for life. Some freestanding communities and for-profit communities do not offer benevolent care. So if you run out of funds, they can ask you to leave. This is important today because more and more people are outliving their retirement savings, even if they have saved quite a bit. I like to use this example. We have a woman here at Phoebe. She saved a great deal. She simply outlived her savings. She entered our charitable care program when she was over 100 years old. And what do you do when you're 100 years old and you run out of money? You can't go get a job. And at Phoebe, she was so grateful because she knew we would care for her for her entire life. She would get the same quality care she had received from that point, when she moved to our communities, and she would get the same level of services that we provide to all of our residents. I offer this advice not to scare anyone, but so you can enter conversations at senior communities with this knowledge and ask the right questions to ensure you will receive care no matter what. So when is this the right time to start looking? Now, the right time is now. The thing that I hear the most often is I should have done this sooner. So for independent living, start looking today. The more active and independent you are, the more you can enjoy all the amenities and the lifestyle opportunities, as well as the wellness services that are offered to keep you independent longer. For higher levels of care, it is best to consider moving to a community before managing and living in your home becomes too difficult or even hazardous. So if you are at a risk for falls and you have to use the steps to do your laundry or to go upstairs, that's a good example. If you no longer can drive and you're isolated at home, what do you do if you need to get somewhere to get medication, or you need to get to the hospital, or we get a large snowstorm like we did several months ago, and you're trapped in the home? Those are things to think about and to not wait for a crisis to happen. So I encourage everybody to start thinking about what you can do now to plan for your future. The sooner you look, the better. You can't look too soon, but it could get too late for you to look. So this is another big question that we often get when we're working with older adults looking for senior care or looking to move to a retirement community or CCRC. How do I pay for a CCRC? Most sales professionals will work with you to see what you can afford and determine how you can pay for services. The salesperson or financial counselor will help you look at your assets. Many communities accept things like your home, maybe your life insurance value. Long-term care insurance can sometimes be used as an asset, and these things can help you qualify even if you don't have as much money saved as you think you might need. So I also want to make sure, I mentioned on the last slide, make sure that you talk about what happens if I run out of assets or run out of money. Remember, 70% of older adults age 65 and older end up needing long-term care sometime in their lives. So it's important to start looking and thinking about that now and thinking about what can you afford, what can you pay for, and how will you pay for it. I also implore you to look at contract options, and I go into that a little bit later too. But an example is Phoebe offers independent living contracts that are 100%, 70%, and 0% refundable. Make sure you understand the refundability of the contract you're signing or looking at and the affordability of each one. So look at refundability and affordability. We encourage you to work with a financial planner. If you don't have one, we can help you find one, or any salesperson who works at a CCRC has financial planners that they've worked with or they know, and they can help put you in contact with one. So let's talk about contract types a little bit more. So Pennsylvania offers several options for CCRCs. They're type A, B, and C contracts. A type A contract is also known as a life care contract. And essentially, a type A contract tends to be more expensive if you move in for independent living. The monthly fee and the entrance fee tend to be higher, but your fees will not increase if you need more intensive services like assisted living or personal care or skilled nursing. So in a very simple way of explaining a type A or a life care contract, you're prepaying in a way for care you may need later. So if you look at the cost for independent living, which isn't as expensive as personal care, and then you look at the cost of personal care and then the cost of skilled nursing care, which is the most expensive type of care, and you sort of take an average of all three of those, you start paying that on day one when you live in independent living in a type A contract, because your rate doesn't go up and you're paying sort of the average along the period of time that you're living at that community. So that's a type A contract. They have the highest entry fees and monthly fees, but you're paying for care that you expect to need in the future. Remember, 70% of people over the age of 65 need on average 2 years of care at some point in their life. So I'm going to keep repeating that fact. A type B contract is a bit of a modified contract. So some things will be included. You can lock in rates and you might have a certain amount of skilled nursing care or a certain amount of assisted living that's included in your contract, but it's limited. So it's a bit of a hybrid between a type A and a type C. A type C contract is a fee-for-service contract. That is the type of contracts that Phoebe Ministries has at our campuses. So you have access to services should you need them, but you pay for the level of care that you are currently living in. So if you're living in independent living, you pay your entrance fee and you pay your monthly fee. If you end up moving to personal care at some point, you stop what you were doing with independent living and now you pay the cost for personal care. The same goes for if you were to move to skilled nursing care, then you pay your skilled nursing rate. So it changes and you only pay for the services as they are needed or if they are needed. I want to go back to this slide because there's a couple other things that I wanted to mention. So we talked about type C contracts. There is another type of contract I wanted to mention that is a type D contract. I don't really have that listed on here. That's a rental contract. There are more of these in the Lehigh Valley popping up now. It's the least expensive option for senior living, but it generally does not include any type of continuum of care if you need that in the future. So with a type C contract, like what Phoebe offers, if you come to Phoebe and you are moving through our continuum and you are a good steward to your resources, but you run out of funds, then you have access to our benevolent care. In a rental contract, if you were to need those services later and could pay for them, that's great. You could have access to those services. If you cannot, you're not guaranteed care. So that's the big difference with the rental contract versus a type C fee-for-service contract. The most significant advantage to a type A, a type B, or a type C agreement is just peace of mind. By belonging to a community where a full continuum of services is available to you, you and your family are assured that arrangements for future health care are already in place in a moment of crisis. So here's my sort of shameless Phoebe plug, but I also wanted to show this slide to everybody just so you can see all of the different communities and services that we offer at Phoebe. I also want to make sure I mention that there are many other great senior organizations in the Lehigh Valley who offer multiple levels of care and wonderful services as well. I encourage you to start looking at the offerings that are available around the Lehigh Valley. And as a marketer, I often compare shopping for senior living to people shopping for a divorce lawyer. Many people don't pay attention to these services until they're in crisis and they need them. You don't think, oh, if I ever need this divorce lawyer, this is who I would use. But if a crisis hits, then you need a divorce lawyer. Same thing with senior living. I'm hoping that by attending this session today, you've learned that there are a lot of simple things you can do to get started in preparing for your future. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. We're going to jump over onto a Zoom, I believe. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. I also encourage you, if you're not able to join the Zoom or you want to have a conversation offline, shoot me an email. More than happy to go back and forth in some emails with you or set up a time to speak. So I thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the expo.